Redline Logbook here for Hestia Familia Part 5. Where we left off last, the Hestia Familia just finished their first expedition in the middle floors, and now we're starting the first war game. So, after Bell killed the Black Goliath on floor 18, a gag order by the guild was sent out, where you weren't allowed to say shit about what happened. Now, obviously, there are some familiars out there with some money and influence, and one of those familiars is Apollo, and he was able to collect some information on what happened on the 18th floor, where he learned that a rare boss was summoned, and it was killed by Bell. Now, Apollo was already interested in Bell because he was a rookie holder, where he became the fastest to hit level 2. But after hearing this story, he then decided that Bell was now his. Now, I just want to point out just how stupid Apollo's plan is, because he basically made it so obvious that he was trying to justify a war game. But besides how stupid it is also needlessly excessive. So part 1 of his plan was to send out a bunch of level 1 adventurers out to a bar where Bell, Lily, and Wealth were celebrating Wealth making it to level 2. These level 1 Apollo Familia members ended up picking a fight with Bell's group, because of course they did, and they got their asses beat. Of course they did. But it doesn't end there. After this whole fight happened, Apollo then invites Hestia's Familia to a party. This party was pretty special because it was all the gods didn't just get to come together and party together like they normally do. They were allowed to bring one of their familia members. And so because Bell and Hestia were the only 2 members of their familia at this time, obviously those 2 got to go. And of course, every other god showed up with their favorite mortal, including Loki and Eyes. Because Hestia and Loki don't like each other, all they did was just argue and then tell each other to walk away, and so they dragged Bell and Eyes away. Both Bell and Eyes actually looked back because the 2 of them wanted to keep talking with each other. Not that they really even had a chance to talk at that moment. Luckily, Hermes was there, and Hermes is no fool, and he decided to help Bell out a bit. He set up a situation that allowed Bell to basically ask Eyes to dance, and the 2 of them actually started dancing. He even got Asphy to hold back Loki and Hestia, so this way they wouldn't interfere. And this was actually a pretty special moment for Bell and Eyes, because this was the first time Eyes ever actually danced, and the first time Bell actually ever danced, and they were really enjoying this sweet moment. That is until Apollo decided to step in. Not just being a cockbuckler, he also is a complete prick, because the first thing he does is he brings up the fact that Bell and his friends beat up members of his familia. And we get the most overacted scene ever in fiction, where Luna, a prum who's a member of the Apollo familia, comes out in like crutches and just cast and bandages covering his entire body, saying, "Oh, the pain, oh, the pain." I'm going to point out that there are healing potions in this world that can fix bones. I'm just going to say it. Like, that. This is just dumb. Once again, this was just some stupid thing Paul put together at the last minute, but it's still really dumb. And so Apollo then challenges Hestia to a war game. And of course she says no, because obviously this is bullshit. And so because Apollo's obvious stupid plan failed, he then went to plan B, which is literally the next day, not a joke, didn't even wait 24 hours. He decides then to attack Hestia and Bell with the full force of his army. They actually blew up the church the 2 of them were living in. So at this point, Hestia and Bell are homeless. This attack is complete overkill because it wasn't just Apollo's familia. He actually hired the Soma familia to take part. And the way he was able to recruit the Soma familia is because it's run by Xanus, the captain of the familia. And he wanted Lily back for the sole purpose of basically using her to trap monsters. Xanus is solely driven by money, wine, and women. And so what he wanted to do was to have Lily use her magic to transform into monsters, to lure other monsters into basically a trap so they could be captured alive and then sold off to the highest bidder. There was nothing really more grand to his ambition than that. He just wanted to make money. And so as soon as Lily basically surrendered to him, he called back all of his forces, which then left Apollo on his own, which at that point it didn't really matter. Hestia and Bell were basically forced to go to Apollo's home and then accept the war game. I still do not understand why he didn't just do this from the get-go, because obviously this was the only thing that was going to work. So when the dust finally settled and they were all able to meet back together and talk this out, they had 2 major problems. 1, Bell wasn't strong enough to beat the captain of the Apollo familia, and 2, Lily's just been kidnapped. And so this is where Hestia really stepped up, where she then declared that she would save Lily herself, and she will take responsibility because Bell needed to get stronger. He had no choice. He couldn't waste time saving Lily. No matter how harsh that may sound, it's the truth. He had to focus solely on getting stronger. And so Bell, of course, trusted his goddess and did the one thing that he could do, which is he went off to ask Eyes to train him. He couldn't even get through the front gates, obviously. He was told to leave because there's no way some random kid was allowed to meet with one of the executives of, well, the Loki familia. But luckily for him, Tion and Tiona actually knew what was going on. And so Tion kind of beat his ass, but whispered in his ear to go around back. And that's where Eyes and Tiona were there. The three of them went up to Eyes and Belle's training spot, and for the next week, they just lived up there and trained. The only time they ever received food or news is when Tion showed up to give it to them. Other than that, Eyes and Tiona just took turns fighting Belle. While Belle was doing that, the Hestia Alliance basically got together to save Lily. So it was Welf, Takamichi familia, and of course the Miyok familia all working together to go and take on the Soma familia. The fight ended up being a complete stalemate for the simple fact that while the Hestia Alliance has better stats and fighting ability because they're actual adventurers, the Soma familia, which are just really a bunch of drunken brawlers, just outnumbered them significantly, and so even if they were able to take down 1 or 2, 10 more would take their place, and so a giant stalemate in the courtyard of the Soma familia was formed where neither side was really giving an inch. And so Lily had to be the one to break the stalemate. Originally, she stuck her head outside the prison cell window and basically told Hestia to leave, that she didn't want them to get hurt. That's why she surrendered in the first place. But then Hestia pointed out that Belle's about to take on a war game and he needs Lily. Like, it's not that Lily is important to Belle. No. He needs her. Without her, Belle's going to lose this war game. Not just because he'd be worried about her, but also because without his strategist, Belle is really just a man charging forward with a knife. And not just that, but Hestia also wanted to point out that everyone loves Lily, not just Belle. They all care about her and they all want her back. And that's when Lily finally comes to the conclusion, or realization, that she has a familia now. And so now she has to escape from her cell. How does she do that? Well, luckily the Soma familia isn't a monolith. Chabra, who was ordered to guard Lily, a male dwarf who's at level 2, hates his captain because he's a prick. He just tosses Lily the keys and she's able to escape. That's literally it. She then goes to Soma and begs him to stop the fighting. Xanis also shows up there and basically is convincing Soma to ignore her and to not listen to her. And Soma, being Soma, he determines that Lily has to earn the right to have an audience with him, to listen to anything she has to say. And so he pours her a glass of Soma wine, which is basically a drug, and gives it to her. Lily drinks it, and she gets hammered instantly and is basically lost in the Soma. She's completely gone. She is unable to respond or even move. She just lies there giggling. And while in the haze, she actually hears many voices calling out to her. It's basically everyone who cares about her. Hestia, Welf, Mikito, everyone and everyone who's ever loved her are calling out to her, and the final voice is Belle's. And that's when she finally snaps back into reality, in tears, mind you, and asks Soma to stop the fighting. This completely stunned Soma. Like, we actually get to see his eyes for the first time because they're covered by his long hair most of the time, but he is just stunned by the fact that Lily had the willpower to overcome Soma. The outcall, not him. And he keeps his word. He grabs a bottle of wine, chucks it out the window. It shatters on the ground, gets everyone's attention, and he declares that the fighting is over and that his familia should drop their weapons. Xanis was not happy about this, and he goes to kill Lily. Fortunately, Naz is a sniper. She shoots her arrow, basically misses Xanis, but it wasn't meant to hit him. There was a rope attached to it, and then Welf is able to use that rope to get into the room, and him and Xanis have a sword fight. Now, they're both level 2, so they should be equally matched, but once again, the Soma familia are really just drunken brawlers, and Xanis just loses to Welf's swordsmanship. Now, Lily cannot officially leave Soma's familia and join Hestia's because she already made a promise to a god that she would give a large sum of money for her release. And so, Hestia then uses the Hestia knife as collateral. Soma agrees to this, he releases Lily from his familia, and she officially joins the Hestia familia. So there you go, the Hestia familia now has 2 members. Lily then respectfully gives her thanks to Soma and goes off to meet with her friends. Soma then and Hestia then have a little conversation. Soma didn't remember giving Lily his blessing, and he actually shows general remorse to Hestia about Lily and what she went through. And Hestia basically lectures him in the kindest way possible, saying, maybe you should just try caring about your familia. Maybe you should, work on it. And from then on out, the Soma familia actually did get better. We'll talk about them on their own video, though. Now, after this, Hestia did her job, which was give Belle a week to train. She did this by, stalling for 3 days at the meeting that was supposed to take place to decide the war game, where she pretended to be sick the entire time. Obviously, Apollo got impatient and basically said that he should be declared automatically the winner, and so that's when Hestia finally had to show up. Now, negotiations for the wargame were going nowhere because Hestia's Familia was tiny and Apollo's was massive. And so no matter what form of competition there was, Hestia's Familia was always at its advantage. And Apollo knew that, which is the whole reason why he challenged her in the first place. So he was not going to agree to a one-on-one fight between Bel and his captain, Hyrcaniosis. I'm just going to call him Haya for short because that's a long name. That's when an agreement was made that they would then draw lots, where every god at attendance there would write down their own version of what they wanted the wargame to be, and then a neutral god who wasn't siding with either party would then pull out random a card. And of course, Hermes was picked because he is the ultimate neutral god. He isn't, but he is. And they ended up getting a siege. Obviously, this was completely unfair for Hestia, and she was pissed. Hermes then suggested that Hestia should have the right to get some help. Apollo, of course, rejected this outright, because once again, he wanted this to be as unfair as possible. That is until Freya started to question his manhood and just started to shit-talk him, and he was finally able to be convinced to allow help, but he had conditions. One, the person's familia could not be for someone from Aurorio, and he could only have one extra person to help. Everyone in the room basically came to the conclusion that Apollo was a petty dick. With the terms of the wargame decided, they decided to pick out a place to do the siege, and they picked one of the old castles which used to be used to fight off the monsters during the ancient time. Obviously, because Apollo had the massive familia, they would be the ones protecting the castle, and so they spent the next 4 days fixing it up, getting it ready for the siege. At the same time, the Hestia familia were also getting ready. First was Welf. Welf immediately went to Hephaestus and asked if he could join Hestia's familia. Now, Hephaestus and Hestia are best friends, and so it was easy for her to say yes, but at the same time, she wanted to really make sure if Welf was willing to give up on his dream to becoming a blacksmith. And his response was, as long as I have a hammer and a forge, I'll always be a blacksmith. He doesn't need to be in a blacksmithing familia. Hephaestus loved this answer and gifted him one of her personal hammers as a parting gift. As for the Takamichi familia, Takamichi himself was planning on actually handing over one of his familia members. Now, obviously, it had to be one of his level 2s, but Oka's the captain, and so he couldn't hand over Oka. So that means he had to hand over Mikito. The thing is, the way that the blessing works is that you have to wait a year after changing familias to change a familia again, which means he would essentially be losing Mikito for an entire year. So he was actually very hesitant to ask her if she would do this. That is when Mikito rushed over to him and asked if she could join the Hestia familia, and she promised she'd be back in a year. So yeah, they were both thinking the exact same thing, and they both understood that it had to be her. Once again, the god was very proud of their child and agreed to this. Now, Tion was giving Bel and them information and food every once in a while, and one of the things she told them is that 3 new members joined the Hestia familia. One from the Hephaestus familia, one from the Takamichi familia, and one from the Soma familia. And Bel didn't even need to be told their names. As soon as he heard that, he fell to his knees and started to cry his eyes out. At that moment, he realized that his friends were there for him, and they were going to do everything in their power to help him. And the final member of the Hestia Alliance, Hermes, once again, he's not actually neutral, immediately went to Ryu and recruited her to basically be the one outsider to basically fight alongside the Hestia Familia during the war game. And so the Hestia Alliance decided to do all the things they had to do to get ready for the war game, and everyone was actually already there by the time Bel's training came to an end. Bel's first stop was to Hestia, where he got his stats updated. He was now all level S on everything. And as he was going off to meet with the rest of his familia, Seer showed up and gave him a necklace. That will be important later. Now, the rules of the war game were quite simple. The Apollo familia's job was to protect their king. In that case, that would be Haken. If the Apollo familia could protect him for 3 straight days and nights, they would win. And if the Hestia familia were able to take him down, they win. And so step 1 of the Hestia familia's plan of winning was actually to do something even before the war game began. They kidnapped Luan, the prum that pretended to be hurt during the dance, and Lily used her magic to turn into him, and she basically snuck into the Apollo familia as Luan. As soon as the horn was blown to signal the start of the war game, Ryu immediately charged out at the fortress with Welf's magic swords. And she started to demolish their walls, just a single attack each. Lily, as Luan, was then able to rile everyone out by declaring that those were Krozo magic swords, and that if they didn't stop her now, they were going to destroy the fortress. And so 30 members of the Apollo familia were then ordered to go out and take down Ryu. Obviously, Ryu being a level 4, demolished all of them. Next person in would be Makoto, who jumped through the hole in the wall that Ryu made, and she started running around. Lily, once again disguised, lied and said Makoto also had a magic sword and was going straight for their captain. And so an entire group of Hollow Familia members once again charged at her. Makoto, first time ever, was able to concurrent chant. Now all she could do was just run away and dodge their attacks while chanting, but she still was able to do it. And as such, she was then able to use her gravity to not just pin herself down, but literally about half of the Apollo Familia. So basically, the majority of Apollo's Familia was wiped out either by Ryu or currently trapped underneath Makoto's gravity. Lily then opened the gates, everyone assuming that Leon was committing treason, and Welf and Bell then just walked right in. Welf then did his job, using his anti-magic to blow up all of their spellcasters so they couldn't do shit, and Bell went straight to the king's room. Bell actually went to the floor right below where Hagen was, and he charged his Argonaut. And with a full charge, he did a fireball on the floor below where Haken and all of his top guards were. And literally every single one of them was fucking one-shotted by this attack. Everyone except for Haken and Cassandra. Reason being is Cassandra saw the attack coming and was able to shield Hiking with her body. So he still took damage. He was burned head to toe, and so was she, but for the most part, they were able to dodge out of the way of the blast. That's when Bell and Hakin then had their fight, and it was not a one-sided fight, as in the anime, no. They were equally matched. Hakin was stronger than Bell, but Bell was faster, and so, while Bell was able to get more attacks in, Haken's attacks were just crushing every single one he threw, and his swordsman skill also was better than Bell's knife skills. Experience does matter, and so they are just going at each other constantly, till finally, Haken gets sick of it, and he decides to concurrent cast. He throws a ring made of light at Bell. Bell tries to block it with Firebolt, but it just cuts right through it and explodes in Bell's face. This right here would have defeated Bell, but the locket he had from Seer was a magic item that absorbed magic. So what the locket does, it absorbs as much magic as it can before it breaks, and then you have to take whatever's left. And so that was enough for Bell to survive this attack. And so this fight ends off with Bell doing what Eyes taught him, which is you convince your enemy to attack when you're in a vulnerable spot as a bluff, and that's when you strike. And he then punches Hayakin out cold, officially winning the war game for the Hestia Familia. And so, because Apollo was so arrogant and he didn't decide to set terms earlier, he just let Hestia make whatever decision she wanted. She decided that he would hand over all of his possessions, disband his entire familia, and be permanently exiled from Aurorio forever. So yeah, the Apollo Familia was done. After this, the Hestia Familia became well known by everyone. They didn't just have a rookie holder who leveled up to level 2 in just a month and a half. Now they defeated one of the middle-ranked familias. Bell was now a household name. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, give it a thumbs up so you enjoy more Danmachi and other many things. Thank you and have a great day.